Good morning. Welcome, my friends, to today's training. We're doing Blunt Cake episode number 6. And this is all about understanding the confusion created by their really good behavior, their really toxic behavior, the ping pong that we go through. Now, what we really have to confront here, because, technically this topic can fall in a lot of different categories and series that I offer, but I'm putting it here because we have to be really blunt about what's going on. So if you're new to me, I'm Burtcher, and I help codependents rediscover their well-being, their happiness after narcissistic abuse. And I help them accomplish that by restoring their safety, their sanity, and their self, which allows them to come to know, love, and live who they are. And that results in them creating happy, healthy relationships, and that's what I do. So welcome. I'm happy and excited to have you here. Before we get started, I need to share this out to the community really quick. So if you're new to me, the community is your safe haven here on the internet, where you can find tools, guidance, and support in your journey beyond codependency, and then maintaining the self-respect, the freedom, and the joy that you gain and that you create after liberating yourself from your codependent habits, from the enmeshment from the narcissistic abuse cycle. So the link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, my friends. And also, if you like this video, if this has impacted you, let me know in the comments below. And also share this out to people whom you know or that you feel would benefit from what I'm sharing here today. So let's get this shared out there. Let me know how you're doing in the comments. And okay, looks like things are thinking. Yay! So again, good morning. So are you confused, or have you had confusion as to what's real? Like, why are they behaving the way they're behaving? What am I doing? I'm gonna adjust this because I'm just going a little like, it's off center. Just my brain. But confused by their great behavior and then their toxic behavior. They give you this ping pong experience in your relationship. First of all, just to get to the bluntness, healthy relationships do not ping pong. Okay? They are consistent. They have an equilibrium. And that equilibrium is safety, it's respect, it's kindness, it's empathy. It's having integrity, it's taking accountability, it's being reliable in those things, it's correcting behavior, it's caring about your well-being and your happiness. It is not intense euphoria and then a descent into distress and into despair and then pinging right back up into euphoria. What's going on there, this ping pong cycle, I'm going to adjust this, is technically called intermittent reinforcement. And this gets us chemically hooked on the person because we're having huge floods of oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. And then on the distress, despair, we're being flooded with cortisol. We're being flooded with adrenaline. And so we develop this fear love with this person. We're in love with them. We fear them at the same time. We're grateful. We're grateful when they don't do the harmful thing to us. We shower them with gratitude for being kind to us. That's a serious signal of intermittent reinforcement. It's a very serious signal of abuse. This is also where this confusion comes from, because it's part of where the confusion comes from, because we think that relationships, it's normal to have some abuse. It's normal to have some, we think that's the problem in relationship. And no wonder we think that. I mean, look at what we experience in reality. Look at what we see on TV, we listen to in songs, we read in books. It's always a Nicholas Sparks experience. It's not healthy. It's not realistic. It's not sustainable. It's harmful to us. So this confusion is rooted in the false idea that toxic relationships are 100% toxic. Like, all the time, it's just hell all the time. And that's not reality. The reality is toxic relationships have very strong, very potent, positive elements and attributes. This is why you stay. This is why you go back. This is why you have hope that things might change. This is where the fantasy is alive and simmering within us, because there are things that occurred in the past that were really good. What this does is it trains us to maximize the feelings of euphoria over the feelings of confusion, pain, emptiness, loneliness, grief, sadness, the suffering we endure. Sometimes we just turn it on ourselves. We're the problem. We're the one who's caused this, that we just need to become more tolerant. We need to change the way we show up, and they won't behave this way. All this gets mixed into this because we believe that the goodness, the good elements, the positive behaviors that they demonstrate are the truth, and that these other ones aren't really the truth. But here's the blunt. Here's this piece of blunt cake for you. The toxic behaviors are the truth, because healthy people just don't think in a way that generates those things. They don't see people in a way that gives them a sense of entitlement to transact pain onto them, onto the other person. The toxic behaviors, the abuse, the harm, the neglect are the truth of the relationship. They're the reality of it. The positive, good moments are toxified. They're polluted. They're destroyed by the toxic behavior, especially if these are patterns. So when we accept this as the primary reality, that, oh, it does not matter how good they've been to me in the past, they're harming me now. And that tells me everything I need to know about their level of health and where they belong and don't in my reality. When we value ourselves, when we treat ourselves with respect, with importance, with value, with priority, abuse becomes an intolerable. Harm becomes the end of the relationship. There isn't a, let's give this another chance, or maybe you'll work this out. It's more like, you've got something seriously wrong that you need to go and get help with, but I'm not going to tolerate this behavior in my world. I am leaving, because this is a zero-sum game. My well-being, my health, my happiness matter more to me than the good things you bring into my world. The harm destroys the good things. The harm destroys the trust, the vulnerability, the intimacy. It violates your well-being. It violates your safety. This is why we have to accept it, because if we're gonna leave the land of codependency, if we're gonna enter real self-love, we're gonna enter real health, both with ourselves and with others, especially relationally. This has to become your fulcrum point. It has to become the truth you live from, is that self-respect is the first priority in your world. It's a me, then you order. That's the blunt cake. If there's abuse, harm, toxicity in the relationship, the whole relationship is toxic. Period. Think of it like, I know I'm blunt here, but think of it like a pool or a pond, for instance. So you're out and walking in the forest, doing forest things. You come across this beautiful pond. I mean, it's clear, it's gorgeous, it seems pristine. But then you start to notice that it has this odd red hue about it, and that there's this strange little stink coming from it. Then you notice some signs that say toxic, sulfuric acid or something. Are you going to drink it? I mean, maybe some of the water's good, But are you going to take that risk? No, you're not. It's the same thing with relationships. It doesn't matter how good they've been to you. It matters first how harmful they've been. And if that's a 0, like they are not harmful to me, cool. Now we have the bare minimum established for this relationship. This means, oh, since they're not a harmful person, I can take some risks on getting to know who they are and building a commitment or discovering them or something, you know, whatever it might be. I'm not a big fan of building commitment just to do it. I'm a big fan of discovering commitment. Much easier to find compatibility that way. But it's the bare minimum. It's not that the minimum is, hey, sometimes we're toxic and we got to work this out. No. 0 toxicity is the minimum. It's more like, how does this person respect me? How do they value me? How do they respect my boundaries? How do they take accountability? How do they show up with integrity? How do they empathize? How do they show compassion? These are the critical signals of someone who is healthy. These are the signals of someone that is safe to start building vulnerability and intimacy with. Notice it has nothing to do with how we feel about them. It has everything to do with how they behave. It has everything to do with the impact you live with in that relationship. That's the key. That's the point. See, codependency is like, I love you. I have all these feelings. And here is all of me. And I'll tolerate whatever you do to me. Because that's what love is. And that isn't what love is. That's enabling. That's addiction. That's self-harm. I know this is blunt. I know it's just like plunk. And so in that light of bluntness, there's also the reality we have to acknowledge within ourselves that we have not known anything different. We have been conditioned by our own experiences, by society, by media, to think that a little toxicity or even a lot of toxicity is kind of like hot. You know, it's kind of like the thing we do. That's the way relationships are. We have been lied to. We have been hooked into a trauma bond, a cycle of euphoria, distress, and despair through seduction, abuse, and discard over and over and over. We haven't come to know real love because real love is safe. Real love is secure. Real love is reliable. It's consistent. It cares about your well-being. And when that other person or you have big distress, you have big pain, there's something wrong, something's going on, you're hurting, you're scared, they're hurting, they're scared, it doesn't turn to violence against each other. It turns towards compassion. It turns towards understanding. It turns towards holding a warm, gentle space with each other. It turns towards care, not control, not avoidance, but understanding, compassion, care, kindness. So if you're in a relationship where you're really confused by their black and white behaviors, where they're really good, then they're really bad, where they're a really great person when they're not on the alcohol, where they're a really great person in public but not in private, where they were really loving and kind in the beginning and now they're just this nightmare. That confusion's telling you something. It's telling you that this relationship is untrustworthy. It lacks integrity. It's telling you that this person you're dealing with has no integrity. They are not showing up in a uniform, predictable way that adds to your well-being and happiness. They're creating chaos, and it's deliberate. They do that to keep you around, to keep you off kilter, to create this cycle of keeping you hooked. So the blunt cake is to understand that the confusion is telling you that this relationship isn't working for you, that it's bringing harm into your world. Even if it's just a emotionally unavailable relationship where they're really hot one day, really cold next, really hot, really cold, really hot, really cold. That's unhealthy for you. That yanks your chain and you just pulled in and pushed out. That's going to activate trauma. That's going to activate distress in your attachment system. It's going to destabilize trust and intimacy. It's going to make you chase after them. You got to come into terms with that and go, wow, this is not what I deserve. Real love, it's consistent. They're available. They're not going to pull you in and push you away. They're going to cultivate space, understanding. And they're going to work with their own struggles with availability, if they have those. They're going to be in integrity with themselves. This might sound like a peak experience, like wow, Marshall, that's a pipe dream. I can understand where that comes from, because I used to think that way myself. Then I started to actually experience it when I started acknowledging reality. I had to acknowledge their behaviors. I had to acknowledge mine. I had to manage my own attachment needs and distress and regulation. I had to regulate my own anxieties. I had to mature into my own space there. And they were doing that same work. We always explicitly own our own feelings, choices, actions, desires. We no longer project our expectations, judgments, and assumptions onto the other person. Instead, we ask. Instead, we actually acknowledge what our assumptions are, what our expectations are. We convert our expectations into requests. We take our assumptions and we look at patterns of behavior, impact, and results to see reality. We're very much in a mature responsibility over ourselves. That's how healthy people navigate relationship, because it's not always an easy thing, right? That's the real work in relationship. It's not working out, I'm going to stop trying to be an abusive person. No. Abusive behaviors and such need to be resolved outside the relationship before they get into a relationship. We should be entering relationships from a state of health, not recovery, in that regard. So I'm going to check out the comments here. Hi, Deborah. Yeah, intermittent reinforcement is how my father dominated and ruled the family. Yes, ping-ponging all over the place. The nightmare of chaos there, yep. Hey, Satori, thank you. And then Deborah, no more tolerating the abuse, taking me a long time to really come to terms with this. Yeah, no, it's a difficult thing. Because we're really raising the bar. We're raising the bar from pit to the surface level. We're starting to make the bare minimums the essential, which means there's going to be a lot of people we don't have relationship with anymore. It means that there's going to be a lot of people that don't fit in our world, but that's the point. So we get into dating, we get into relationship development. Codependency comes from a space of lack, right? We are lacking something. We've lived in neglect, number one. So we haven't had a high volume of attention, acceptance, being valued, loved, protected, played with, included, things like that. And we live in a fear of having to endure that. So we buy into a fantasy called quantity. That means if I have a whole lot of people, I'll be okay. We also buy into the fantasy that just one person can meet all my needs. This is a child fantasy that the child has about a parent. In reality, we don't need quantity, and we don't need just one. What we need is quality. And raising this bar from the pit of tolerance into the, hey, bare minimum is you're safe, available, reliable. You're a person who practices the 8 relationship bare minimums, where they respect boundaries, they're reliable in that respect, they take accountability, they respect privacy, they demonstrate integrity, they have a large, warm acceptance of you and themselves, they give you positive, warm regard, and they practice empathy. And all of these things are consistently practiced. That's the bare minimum. The person must show up with those traits before we give them anything, any kind of vulnerability, or we start opening up to trust or those kinds of things. Reason why is because we are putting our safety and our well-being first, and getting into a relationship with someone is a risk. So we're mitigating the risk of harm to ourselves by seeing how they behave. That's where we start, that bare minimum. And then we can discern where they fit. We're no longer playing the, oh, I found someone, I'm just going to commit to him game. It's more like, how do you fit in my world? How do you add to my well-being, my happiness? And that's the essential component there. So I think I probably lost my train of thought there, though, too. Deborah says, the whole relationship is toxic. Yes. If there is abuse, if there is neglect, if there's this ping-ponging going on, the whole relationship is toxic. You can't, well, the codependent brain likes to compartmentalize things. Well, we had these good times, so I'll just stay over here. That's not reality. That's fantasy. That's deceiving yourself. I know this is blunt. That's what the Blunt Cake series is about. It's just to the point. But in this, it's not about condemning ourselves. It's not about shame or guilt. It's about compassion and accountability. It's like, yep, well, that's what's going on. And then giving ourselves a lot of compassion and a lot of time in which to digest and explore it, so that we are meeting ourselves in a loving, respectful way. We are, these things are not a result of some failure in us or a flaw. These things are a result of how we were raised, how we've been programmed and conditioned. They've all we've known. And the brain only does what it knows. And so it's been doing what it knows, and now it's learning something different. And if you go forward and practice it and discover for yourself this other reality, then it'll start to live that too. So that confusion, it's the signal that something's wrong. Things are not adding up. Healthy people are consistent. They're boring that way. You can predict what they will do, and you'll be like, yep, all right, if I show them love, they'll do this. You know, yeah, if I have a complaint, they'll do this. And the predictability is, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel valued. I feel understood. That's the point. You're not going to get that in a chaotic or toxic relationship. Let's see some other comments here. And so crazy to think I was always taught the abuse part was not the truth, just an accident. Yeah, right? It's just an accident. It's because of their trauma. I just made a mistake. Yeah, no. Abuse is not the product of a mistake. It's the product of what I call entitled victimhood. I have the right to make you hurt because I hurt for some reason. Pam says, the idea of zero toxicity is the minimum is something I need to frame and put on my wall. Ooh, you could make like a little stitch thing. You know, those little stick charts. I don't know what to call them, but you stitch them? Yeah. But yeah, when we treat ourselves with respect and when we are treating ourselves with real love, we're not treating ourselves with toxicity anymore. We're not doing that to others. We're really within our wholeness, our integrity. And it becomes a lot easier to see it in others too. We're like, oh, they're showing up that way. Oh, they're not. This doesn't mean that mistakes don't happen, by the way, because I know this can sound really idyllic. But here's the trick. Mistakes in relationship aren't like, oops, I'm sorry I screamed at you and called you awful names and tore you down and made you feel awful or gaslit you. Those are not the mistakes that occur. Sorry, I demeaned your feelings or your wants or your needs. Those are not mistakes. That's abuse. Mistakes are, oops, I forgot to, I said I would do the thing and I didn't do the thing. Here's what I'll do next time. That would be a mistake. Or maybe they're playing or there's a little jokey going on and it touches something sensitive. You know, it steps on an egg in you. And it opens up some emotion. Then they care about that. Abuse isn't mistakes. Mistakes are just, whoops, didn't understand that. Here's what I'll do differently. And then they do it. Because that's the integrity component of the 8 relationship bare minimums. Hey, Robin, how are you? Hey, Barb, thank you. Yes, bring the bluntness. Thank you, Satori. Self-harm, yep, we're going to be kind with ourselves. Gentle. Yes, blunt cake, Deborah. Yes. Emotional unavailable makes me crazy, makes me chase. Yes, that's the point. Because you're doing a Nicholas Sparks experience. You're doing the Notebook. Oh, God, I need you. Won't go away. Oh, I need you. Ah. It's insanity. Thank you, Crystal. Can you describe what neglect in an adult relationship looks like? Yeah. They ignore you, number one. You want some affection. They're like, not tonight. I don't want that. Or they just attack. They're like, no, you're just so needy. They're spending more time doing something else. They spend more time with the dog. They pay more attention to their video games or their friends or their work than you. They don't respond to your bids for attention, for connection, for correction. They are not giving you active, dedicated attention. Like quality attention would be, hey, I'll give you an example. A few nights ago, in my relationship, my girlfriend invited me over for some dinner. So I went over, I had some dinner, sat down, watched the show, talked about what's going on in our worlds. Show us the background. I don't even remember what it was because we're talking with each other. We're just spending time with each other. Neglect would be like, hey, I'm going to come over and get the booty call, go home. That would be neglect. That's a common form of neglect, actually, is sex-only interaction, or affection is only sexually oriented. There's no platonic affection. There's no play. There's no just doing normal life things together. That's neglect. That if there isn't that going on, then there's neglect there. Neglect is the absence of things that ought to be there that are nurturing the relationship. Let's see. Samantha, my exes complained of me being boring. Oh, well, that means you're probably damn consistent there, Samantha. And that's good. That's good. Be consistent. Healthy people love consistency because they really enjoy the safety it brings. They enjoy the intimacy it builds. It gives this freedom to the relationship to go out and have adventure and do adventurous things together. So it's actually a really, really cool place to develop from. Hi, Sonia. My ex ignored me for most of 2 decades. Yeah. Unless they want something, they're just, hey man, I want my cookie. Got my cookie. See ya. Just don't want to talk about it. Yeah, you're welcome, man. For the validation, is neglect behavior indicative of dismissive, avoidant attachment style? It can be, yes. It can be. Because I come from that point of view. That's what I call. I look at attachment styles as a set point. Like, this is where we start from. And I have what's called disorganized attachment, which means I'm either avoidant or anxious depending on the individual and what they're doing and how attached or I feel to them, or how activated like a euphoria is or something. When I'm with secure people, I have more of an avoidant attachment style. So attachment can be complex that way. They can be neglectful, but generally they tend to try to build intimacy in ways that feels safe for them. But they don't have a whole lot of capacity for it, so you get these bursts of it. But they're not necessarily just there isn't a pattern of just using you for like a benefit. They have an interest in things, but they don't have any way of regulating the sense of being engulfed. And so they run or they just shut things down. Now, if the dominant interaction, if this person's constantly coming back into your world because they want sex, they want that, that's your big red. It's just like, dude, you're not available. I'm out. But an avoidant that's working on themselves will be building intimacy in a lot of other ways. But yeah. Now here's the trick. Narcissists are generally avoidant, highly dismissive avoidant, but not all avoidants are narcissists. Recovering avoidants are ones that are highly empathetic, highly compassionate. They have a lot to work through in their engulfment. They really value freedom and their independence. But they don't have the narcissistic attributes of grandiosity. They don't lack empathy. They don't lack the victim framework. They lack the victim framework. They're not constantly a victim. They're not constantly displacing or blaming you. They're not denying, attacking, reversing victim and offender orders and things. They take accountability, that kind of thing. So, but those two can get pretty blurry there. But yeah, and they're generally dismissive avoidants are not abusive. They are going to be they can feel really neglectful because they're not highly attentive, because they don't have a high level of availability to So yeah, we have to lean into it. We have to connect with it. We have to build capacity with it. This coming September, this coming fall, I have a course called the Relationship Essentials course, where we're going to do work on evolving attachment styles into a secure attachment. So that might be something to keep an eye on there. Yeah, the regular avoidant cares. They don't blame you. They just take extra space. Yes. Yeah. There's not violence and abuse involved, but there's also not grandiosity, and there's not this profound victimhood that narcissists have, and there's not this woe is me, and they tend to be ultra independent. They don't need other people, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where that shows up. Thank you guys for showing up for today's blunt cake. Be gentle with yourself. Go kindly with yourself. Allow the truth to teach you. Because in the Heal Yourself strategy, that's where you start, my friends. You want freedom from codependency. You start with the Heal Yourself strategy, where I help you learn how to restore safety, sanity, and self. A very practical, gentle, guided practice. I take you step by step through building those practices into your world and helping you create those results. Because in that, I teach you how to understand what's real, how to value it, so that you can move on and be free. That's the point. It helps engender self-respect. That's how I break free of this. So that confusion tells you there is something wrong. You need to look at the pattern of results, impacts, and behavior that are showing up so you can see reality. The impact does include the confusion and what it costs you and what you are motivated to do because of it. A lot of times we're motivated to violate our own boundaries and harm ourselves by doing those things. That's what we have to be very, very conscious of here. Self-respect says, nope, I'm not chasing. I'm not violating my own boundaries to keep this relationship because I don't need to chase after a relationship that's healthy. Healthy relationships move towards each other. They're not always doing the Pac-Man kind of thing. So there you go. So if you want assistance in this, the Heal Yourself strategy is where you start. The link is below on Facebook, or above on Facebook, below on YouTube. You can enroll now, get started. Comes with twice a week live support from me, where you can work with me personally in a live group environment to get the assistance you need. In fact, that's going to be starting here in a half hour. So we've got your back in helping you break free. So look forward to seeing you guys in the course, and be safe out there. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I'll see you guys in our next episode, in our next training. Bye-bye, guys.